Pompeii's destroyer became its greatest archivist, sealing an ordinary Roman city more completely than any emperor ever could. 17 years earlier, a violent earthquake had already warned Pompeii, and the city answered by rebuilding beneath the same mountain. The final killer was not lava, but a ground-hugging storm of ash that arrived after daylight had vanished. It preserved bread ovens, painted bedrooms, election messages, street counters, fountains, and wheel ruts exactly where life stopped. Some residents had hours to flee. Yet the deadliest phase came when Pompeii's streets were almost impossible to recognize. Why did anyone stay? Because the volcano had created the fertile soil, trade, wine, and wealth Pompeii could not abandon. Long before marble temples, settlers occupied a volcanic ridge overlooking farmland, waterways, and the Bay of Naples. The location offered rich soil, defensible height, inland routes, and access to Mediterranean trade, all inside one compact landscape. Early residents stored grain, raised animals, shaped pottery, and strengthened the ridge with simple walls and guarded entrances. Small sanctuaries appeared beside homes, binding harvests, survival, and civic identity to rituals performed under Vesuvius. Boats delivered salt, oil, pottery, and cloth, while local crops and wine moved outward toward distant markets. Pompeii's first great bargain was already clear. The mountain enriched everything, while concealing the price beneath the ground. Under Samnite influence, rough settlement streets became stronger walls, organized neighborhoods, workshops, markets, and monumental sacred spaces. Market stalls overflowed with grain, olives, fish, bronze tools, dyed fabric, pottery, and wine from volcanic vineyards. Stunnecutters, metalworkers, potters, and weavers filled entire districts, turning local materials into the machinery of urban growth. Terraced sanctuaries rose above the roofs, projecting wealth and connecting Pompeii to the cultures of southern Italy. Drainage improved, streets became more regular, and public spaces began controlling movement, commerce, worship, and political influence. Behind its walls, Pompeii commanded the routes linking inland farms, the Sarno Plain, and the nearby coast. Then Rome absorbed the city. After rebellion failed, Pompeii became a Roman colony around 80 BCE. Older streets were repaved, fountains expanded, and familiar neighborhoods adapted to Roman law, language, engineering, and ambition. The Forum became Pompeii's public theater, where religion, justice, trade, elections, and reputation competed beneath towering colonnades. Public baths offered heat, cold water, exercise, gossip, and business. An urban network disguised as personal relaxation. Below their floors, furnaces, water channels, and drainage systems quietly powered one of the city's most complex institutions. Pompeii's bakeries used lava stone mills and huge masonry ovens to turn grain into thousands of round loaves. Street counters served hot food, wine, and simple meals from ceramic jars built directly into brightly painted masonry. Its amphitheater hosted mass entertainment more than a century before Rome completed the Colosseum. Pompeii was never merely provincial. At its peak, temples, theaters, baths, workshops, villas, vineyards, shops, and crowded streets filled the fortified city. Lighthouses controlled every impression, pulling visitors through painted rooms, reflecting pools, sculpture, gardens, and carefully framed views. Their frescoes created impossible architecture, distant gardens, mythology, status, and entire worlds on walls only centimeters thick. Outside, merchants, porters, animals, carts, and customers fought for space along roads polished by generations of wheels. But Pompeii's most honest archive was not marble. It was gossip, insults, advertisements, and election campaigns scratched onto walls. Those messages reveal ambition without ceremony. Candidates asked for votes beside shops, homes, taverns, and neighborhood shrines. Public fountains kept dense neighborhoods alive, placing reliable water beside homes. Workshops, baths, shops, and crowded intersections. Bread production linked farms, animals, millstones, ovens, vendors, and customers in a supply chain visible across the city. Crossroads shrines placed religion directly inside traffic, where neighborhood loyalty, business, movement, and ritual collided every day. The large theater transformed entertainment into social architecture. Arranging the audience so rank remained visible from every seat. Inside private homes, the atrium collected rainwater, received clients, displayed status, and guarded access to more private rooms. From upper floors, residents saw temple roofs, oven smoke, vineyards, crowded lanes, and the apparently peaceful mountain beyond. Painters, plasterers, mosaic workers, and stonecutters constantly renewed Pompeii, hiding older structural damage beneath fashionable new surfaces. Beyond the gates, volcanic vineyards produced wine, employment, trade, and fortunes that tied landowners to the mountain's fertility. Townhouses compressed business below and domestic life above, placing labor, status, commerce, and privacy behind one facade. At sunset, crowds approached the amphitheater, turning entertainment into a public display of hierarchy, identity, and civic pride. Then, in 62 CE, the ground convulsed hard enough to damage temples, baths, homes, streets, and businesses across Pompeii. Tiles crashed into empty streets, plaster split from walls, fountains spilled, and familiar buildings suddenly became dangerous. Inside wealthy houses, cracked frescoes and fallen columns exposed how quickly carefully staged luxury could become debris. Temples required major repairs, and several sacred projects remained unfinished when the eruption interrupted them 17 years later. Bath complexes also fractured, forcing expensive repairs to vaults, furnaces, water systems, plaster, and painted decoration. Damage varied block by block, leaving some neighborhoods active while others remained construction zones for years. Here is the decision that changed everything. Pompeii did not retreat. It rebuilt around the warning. Scaffolds rose, shops reopened, streets were repaired, and workers covered visible scars with fresh plaster and new paint. The Forum resumed public life while columns, temples, paving, and civic buildings remained under active reconstruction. Commerce returned beside building sites, proving residents still believed Pompeii's future was safer than its recent past. Crowds returned to entertainment. Routines returned to streets, and the earthquake slowly became a disaster people believed they had survived. But below Vesuvius, pressure continued building inside a volcanic system that had shaped this landscape for centuries. In 79 CE, the mountain opened, launching a towering column of ash and pumice above Pompeii. The cloud expanded until sunlight disappeared, and a moving shadow crossed streets where business had begun only hours earlier. Pumice fell relentlessly, blocking doors, filling courtyards, burying stepping stones, and loading roofs with crushing weight. The Forum faded behind ash as temples, statues, and escape routes dissolved into the same gray darkness. Inside houses, ash poured through open roofs, turning clear pools gray and extinguishing the beauty of painted interiors. Shops stood abandoned. Food remained on counters, containers rolled across paving, and commercial Pompeii fell silent. Roofs began failing under accumulated pumice, making shelter increasingly dangerous before the volcano's final weapon even arrived. The amphitheater vanished into haze, while ash erased the landmarks residents had used to navigate all their lives. Then the eruption column collapsed, releasing a fast, ground-hugging pyroclastic current directly toward the exposed city of Pompeii. For roughly 15 minutes, ash and gas swept through the city, long enough to close the final window for survival. Afterward, ash, pumice, rain, and soil buried walls and streets until Pompeii disappeared beneath an ordinary landscape fields, and tracks crossed above hidden houses while Vesuvius returned to silence, and generations forgot the city below. Nothing on the surface revealed the bakeries, bedrooms, fountains, shrines, theaters, and political messages sealed underneath. Yet the buried street grid remained intact, waiting for one excavation to reverse nearly 17 centuries of silence. Excavation began in 1748, when workers uncovered walls and objects they did not immediately identify as Pompeii. Stone by stone, streets returned with wheel ruts, stepping stones, fountains, counters, doorways, and rooms still in position. Early excavators often chased valuable art, but later, archaeology began documenting layers, buildings, objects, and ordinary life systematically. Today, conservators can reunite shattered fresco fragments, rebuilding painted ceilings and scenes unseen together for almost 2 millennia. About 2/3 of the ancient city has been uncovered, while untouched areas still protect unknown rooms and stories. Walking Pompeii now means following the same stones used by merchants, bakers, voters, worshippers, workers, and builders. Vesuvius erased Pompeii in a day, but the disaster preserved ordinary lives more clearly than the lives of emperors.